fundamentals of training never change, but it's how you piece them all together that makes the difference. Getting faster over the 5k distance is something that a lot of us aim to achieve year in, year out, and ultimately the benefits of getting faster over the shorter distance massively helps us when it comes to moving up to the longer distances. Now, there are some great videos out there already on YouTube of how to help you guys improve your 5k time, but I feel like I can add to this, and so today I want to cover 5 elements that I've implemented into my recent 5k training block that have helped me in the long term, going from breaking 20 minutes all the way down to my most recent 15:53. So what I'm going to do is bullet point those 5 things right now, and then if you're interested you can then skip forward into the video using the chapters in the description below where I talk about those things in a little bit more detail, but I want to give you a quick rapid fire as to what those 5 things are. Oh, and don't forget, if you've seen some great improvements in your 5k times over recent years, please do feel free to drop a comment below at the end of the video for what I've missed and what you feel has been the most effective thing in your training block to really push you on to that next level. Let's dive in. Number 1, hill strides. I think this has been the most effective thing that I have implemented into my recent 5k training block that I actually feel has probably made the biggest difference. Number 2, progressing the session duration from week 1 all the way up to week 10. Number 3, progressing the overall volume in general, and no, that doesn't mean you have to push your limits of volume in general. It just means starting a little bit further back than where you were and just progressing through the training block. Number 4, hitting a multiple range of paces across the training block and not just homing in on that top end 5k specific work. And number 5, having multiple races in the training block to get that training effect from those races that you just can't replicate when you're out there on your own. Right, so let's go back to number 1, hill strides. Let's go into these in a bit more detail. I'll go through how I've been implementing them into my training and how you guys can do it too. So strides in general is something I've been trying to be really regimented with over the last couple of years, and in particular with this 5k training block I have really made a point of making sure I do not miss them week in, week out. This time I have moved them to the hills, and I have been really impressed with how my leg strength has felt during my 5k races. Now, I will be honest, there's been a bit of trial and error for my part. I have tried hill sprints as well as hill strides. Yes, there's a difference. Strides are very much more a case of more relaxed accelerations where you're getting up to around 95% of your max effort, whereas sprints, of course, as they sound, are sprints. I found the recovery after the sprints, even though they're 4 by 20 seconds, which is what I've been implementing, they have actually caused me some aches and pains in my glutes and hamstrings, and that has had a knock-on effect into my session the next day. So I scrapped that completely and just stuck with the strides. So effectively what we're looking to do is get those legs turning over nice and fast, getting those benefits biomechanically from moving at a quicker pace, but obviously not taking anything out from the session the next day, because I've been implementing them on my very first run of the week after my moderate steady run with those hill strides the day before my first session of the week. And for me, what I felt like is I get a bit of a double whammy effect, because the Tuesday session that I like to do is my shorter, faster interval session, and of course that's where I'm also turning my legs over a little bit faster. As a bigger runner and someone that has slower cadence, those type of sessions are super useful for me, plus implementing the hill strides where I am once again turning the legs over nice and fast, getting another chance to do that the day before without taking anything away from that next day's session. It has been absolutely fantastic. And I would also just like to add the leg strength has been absolutely phenomenal, and again, I haven't necessarily felt that from doing normal strides, but since implementing those hills, doing those once a week, it has meant that through the race, even though I'm pushing the pace, my legs have felt like they could carry me to the end. More often than not in a 5k race, I can often feel like halfway my legs start to go to jelly a little bit. That has not been the case throughout this training block. I have felt strong throughout the race, and I've not yet suffered with any jelly legs later in those races. So hill strides, absolutely put them in the day before a session, keep them light to start with. I've just been doing 4 by 20 seconds with an easy jog and walk back down. That's all I've done. I've started simple, and in the next training block I'll start to extend those up to 6 and maybe 8 of them. Number 2, building that session duration throughout the training block. So what I like to do, and of course everybody's different, but the way that I love to attack a training block is I like to start off with a bit of a wider range of paces in week 1 and then squeeze those down and get a little bit more specific as I get towards race week, and that sort of pivots in and around the halfway mark through the training block. So that first part of my training block I am spending a lot of time doing faster than race pace work and slightly slower than race pace work, and those session durations, the volume of work that I'm doing in those first few workouts are much smaller, because of course I am working harder, I am creating a little bit more fatigue in the muscles despite the lack of volume. Because I'm pushing a little bit harder, I do find that it can take a little bit more more out of me. But of course, by doing that, as I get closer to race day and start to lock into race pace feels really super easy. Great example, I just started off this training block right now with 8 by 400 meters and 4 by 200 meters, a very small session duration, and in terms of rest and recoveries, 75 seconds rest and recovery in between each 400 meter rep. So quite a generous recovery. Fast forward to a couple of weeks ago where I'm nearing the end of the training block, 14 by 400 off of 45 seconds easy jog, locking in around race pace, and I can tell you that session, despite the volume being bigger, was much easier and much more controlled than that first session in week 1. And what you also find by having that top end session in there, slightly smaller volume but slightly more intense, is that, as I said, when you do get down to race pace, it feels so much more comfortable, and you've had a good few weeks to practice that slightly faster than race pace effort. So at this point, when you do hit a race and you are in your specific phase of training, then it does make things feel so much easier. So once again, progressing that session volume just builds your endurance and just starts to make race pace feel a little bit easier. Number 3, progressing your volume throughout your training block. I think this often scares a lot of people because I think a lot of people like to think, and we all know that obviously a general increase in volume is always going to help as long as you structure your training correctly. Obviously your body knows time, it doesn't know anything about the days of the week that you run, the amount of miles you run, it just knows how long you are exercising for. And obviously if you increase that time week on week, then naturally, or year on year I should say, where you're gently increasing, then you're going to get fitter. But through a training block, I think a lot of people go, oh my gosh, I need to raise my volume, I haven't got the time, I've got commitments, this isn't going to work. What I often recommend, and what I do myself, is I actually just bring my volume back a little bit and start at week 1 and then work towards what a realistic peak week mileage is. So as a great example, I used to do training blocks in and around like 40-mile weeks and then peak around 50-55. I'm more around 60 to 70 miles now, so I started my first few weeks around that 55-mile mark, and then I've ended up peaking at 69 miles, I think it is. And so my first week was never anywhere near what my biggest mileage week was. But what you often find going hand in hand with progressing session volume is that if you progress everything as you go along in the training block, naturally you start to feel a lot fitter, you start to feel a lot better, you're loading your body up more, but you're also getting the benefits of spending slightly longer time on feet. But what that also means is when you are doing a little bit less volume in the beginning and your sessions are a little bit more intense, or what I find anyway, because that's how I like to do it, is that I've got more time to recover. I'm not putting quite as much intensity into the body, and so it can handle what I'm throwing at it. So that general overall volume increase as you go through is highly recommended as well. Number 4, hitting a whole range of paces across a training block. So what I like to do when I'm doing my training block, and I highly recommend it to you guys, and I often give it to a lot of my athletes as well, is that I like to implement a good pace range, because ultimately I am not an elite runner, and I can pretty much guarantee that 99.9% of my viewers are also not elite runners. So what's really important for us to enjoy the sport and to embrace training is to not break down when we are implementing these top end speed sessions, which can often be the case. So working on those supporting paces throughout the training block is also key. When you're doing those top end 5k sessions like I like to do on a Tuesday, and I'm sure you like to do as well, I always like to make sure that I do sessions that complement each other along the way. So for example, my Thursday session might include a little bit of marathon pace work and then a bit of 10k pace work, which might be attacking my LT1 and LT2 areas, and then my weekend long run might have a little bit of tempo thrown in there, which might end up coming in and around my half marathon effort. So across the board, I've sprinkled in a little bit of marathon, half marathon, 10k work on top of then having that dedicated 5k session. Overall, what does that mean? By the time I get to the end of the week, I feel like I've built myself up a really strong foundation, along with working on the specificity that I need. And then of course, when I get closer to the goal race, things start to change a little bit, and I do lock in a bit more to 5k work. However, in those early stages, working on a broad variety of paces means that when I get to that specific area, my body's in a good condition to be able to handle the speed. And finally, the 5th thing is to have multiple races in your 5k training block to get that training effect that you cannot replicate during your own training. Tune-up races are so massively important, I think, especially in the shorter distance realm. It just gets you race sharp, it gets you practicing how your body's going to feel when you're out there at race pace. It gives you then ideas to work on off the back of that if the race doesn't quite go to plan, or if it goes really well, then you definitely know you're on the right track. Something that I've done in this training block that I'd highly recommend to anybody is have 2 goal races throughout my 10-week training block, one at halfway, one at the end, and then I've dropped 2 other ones in between there, and I've ended up using those ones as training races where basically I've just trained through them. I've not reduced my mileage, I've not got myself fresh for them, I've just gone out there and raced them hard, and then I'm going to be reducing my mileage for the final race, and I did reduce my mileage for that mid-block race. And as I just said, you can't replicate that environment, that race environment in training. You can't replicate the effort that you put in, because that adrenaline often carries you through those races, and it gives you a good idea as to where you're at fitness wise. I started the block at 16:03. I then ran a 15:57 on the first goal race where I did taper down. I then ran a 15:53 on the next training race, and again on each race what I've learned overall is that my legs have felt strong, my pace has felt good, and I've been able to do 2 different styles of racing strategies. Number 1, be a bit more conservative and work into it, and then number 2, just go out hard and see if I can hold on. And these are all things you end up learning when you're doing these tune-up races. So for me, over the last 10 weeks, those have been the 5 things that have made a huge difference to my 5k training, and I strongly think they can make a massive difference to you guys as well. Those hill strides in particular, honestly, I swear by them, and I will not be dropping them in any future 5 and 10k training blocks. Of course, tune-up races, as I said, are absolutely crucial. I've always progressed my sessions and my overall volume of a training block, and hitting a whole range of paces has always just made me feel strong, and that's led to some really good performances throughout this training block. But of course, for a better phrase, there's more than one way to skin a cat, and I'd love to hear your thoughts down in the comments below, because there are plenty of ways to train for a 5k, and I know that my way works for me and a load of other people, but of course other people like to train slightly differently. So I'm reaching out to you guys. What do you feel has made the massive difference in your 5k training blocks? What advice do you feel you could give newer runners that are looking to bring down their 5k time? Anything that you feel you can share and add to this discussion would be greatly appreciated. And with that in mind, I'm going to leave a couple of videos on screen up here and down here that I think you guys are going to find very useful. If you found this one useful, make sure you check out one of these, and I'll see you guys over there.